Hello everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Today we're going to be working on the forging press again, getting the platen rebuilt and sunk down a little bit to give me a bit more room between the dies. But first, I need to do a little project for the tripod you're standing on right now. What these are for are actually the feet on this tripod. The feet that are on this tripod are pretty bad. They're all worn out. So I made these guys to go over them. I need to cut these old feet off and thread these on. There's still a little bit of thread left. These are, I thought that they were aluminum air fittings. Quick connect air fittings, but I think these might be for hydraulics or something, because they are very, very hard. I thought they were aluminum, and they were definitely not. So I'll fit these guys up, and then I'll take you outside to the forging press. So this here is the bottom platen on the forging press. It's made up of two chunks of 5-inch C-channel. It holds the weight quite well, the 20 tons of force, but again, it's too tall. This 5 inches plus another probably 3/4 inches for some plates that are right here, plus another 5 or 6, and it just adds up very, very quickly. So what I really want to do is take out this 5 to 6 inches here and sink it down. I can't really sink down the cross slide much. It's too wide to fit between the bottom frame rails, but that doesn't really matter. I don't need that much space, but I do want a few more inches of space for tooling, for punches, for things like that. So first step is going to be to get this platen off, the cross slide, and then the platen, because they're kind of two separate pieces. So after a lot of thinking and not a lot of happening, I think what I'll do to sink this chunk or this platen down, that guy there, to sink that down into this C channel, what I'll do is cut out sort of two squares here and here approximately. Cut those out so that this will fit all the way down to the bottom. Cut away a notch down here on the bottom flange, and essentially what that will do is allow this C-channel to sink down and be flush with this C-channel. So the bottom would rest on the bottom flange here and get all welded up. I'll take the oxy torch to this, cut these squares out back here, over there. I'll have to cut this bottom platen to length, and also I do need to do a bit of repair work to it. So what I need to do is, there were two 1/2-inch AR400 plates here. An AR400 is not a good choice for this, but it's what I have. There used to be two of them. one here and then one over here. This one, the weld broke on it, so what I'll have to do is grind away that weld that's right here and put that plate back on. Because this plate here, I'll stick weld it this time around, and I'll probably take some 7018s or maybe 6011s and go over a lot of these welds just to make sure they're very, very strong. I don't really need these two plates on here, but they just kind of help. They're more for convenience. They're sort of a table. This middle section here is really what takes the brunt of the force. These two plates on either end, they're not exactly decorative, but they don't do as much. So I have the bottom platen set up here in hacksaw. The hacksaw really isn't the best place to be doing this, or the best machine to do this, but it'll give me the most accurate cut. I'm going to start off going very slow. Hacksaw, it's beyond its capacity. This is. So I was able to cut these to length. They are a little bit short by about a 1/4 inch, but that'll be fine. So now what I need to do, I had to use a cutoff wheel with a angle grinder that's a bit too small. The hacksaw only did one of these, only cut one of these. The rest of them I had to cut with the cutoff wheel because hacksaw was just a bit too sketchy. And so now what I'll do is I'll break out the blue wrench, bring it over here and start cutting away so that I can drop that down into here. And I'm also going to be cutting away the flange right here so it sits down in there. So that it kind of sits, as it sits like that. So it sits on top of that flange. I got to cut that away and then cut the top part away so the top will fit. And then I'll weld it all up. So the cutting wheel broke, and these are about a 1/4 inch too long. I measured wrong, I guess. So let's see how the cutting torch does. Let's see how good I am with the cutting torch. Clear out some stuff. So I'm super close to getting this platen fit up down there. There's a couple little spots that need to get ground down, and of course all this slag needs to get ground off. A lot of this is going to be kind of tricky to get to with the stick welder, but I think I can do it. So I'll bring you guys back when there's news. So it's the next day. I have the platen sunk down. I didn't weld in this plate here just so I have more access. I started thinking about how I'm going to weld up all the bottom parts here, and I realized if that plate's not in the way, it'll be a lot easier. I did kind of make some more mistakes in my measuring. There's bigger gaps here than I would really like, but those aren't going to be a huge issue. And also this frame is so wide that I really can't sink it down much. The torch wouldn't get in there, and I have some pretty big welds there that are very important that I really don't want to cut. So the press, this C channel is going to sit maybe a ½ inch higher than I was hoping for it to. I really shouldn't have notched out that bottom part. Sort of, if I brought it up, I notched out the bottom here. I really shouldn't have done that, just so it could sit on the flange, but you know, mistakes were made. But it's still going to be very, very strong, probably stronger than it needs to be. I'm not only going to weld up all of these gaps here and here, I'm also going to put rebar to join not only the two chunks of C channel that are welded to the frame in this direction, it's also going to be tied in to the C channel that's in this direction. Normally I would only use one set of the chunks of C, I don't know how you'd say it. I'd only use 2 chunks of C channel. I would only use these ones or these ones, but with this platen design, which is hopefully going to be my final one, I'm going to be using all 4 of them. I'm going to be welding it very, very solid. I'm going to definitely be doing everything on top and on the sides here, sort of welding in here on the C channel. I don't know what I'm going to be doing on the bottom. I could put more, just like up here, put rebar to fill in the gap down in the bottom and weld it in from the bottom, but I've never done any overhead welding, and I might try it. I might do a little bit of it. I'm here at the other end of the shop just to show you guys the stick welder I'm going to be using. This is the red Lincoln stick welder. I would be using the big one, which has the really long leads, but I can't put power to it yet. The cords on it are just so big that I couldn't rob the plug off of the little welder and put it on the big welder. So what I did was I took the leads off of this one, and I joined them to the long leads on the big welder. And the long leads, they go out to where I'm welding. And here is the positive, and of course here's the working or ground. I'm going to be welding AC, so the orientation doesn't matter as much. But yeah, hopefully I get this big welder up soon so I can do this all properly. I don't think those big wires will actually physically fit in this welder. Otherwise we would just swap out the cables on the inside. But your day will come.
I'm lonesome but happy, rich but I'm broke, and the good Lord knows the reason. I'm just a cowpoke from Cheyenne to Douglas, the ranges I know, 'cause I drift with the wind, no one cares where I go. I ain't got a dime in these old worn out jeans. What's up?
Starting to get a little late here, but here are the welds. They are not great at all, but they will hold. No doubt in my mind they'll hold. There's a bit of undercut on that one. A lot of undercut, but I might go over some of these again, especially those. But for the most part, I'm pretty happy. I'm not a welder. I'm not a good welder, obviously. But I think these should all hold. Not only did I get there, but I got in there. Oh, you guys can just barely see that. I got in there. So, I'll catch up with you guys in the morning. Alright, so I did a little bit more welding on this morning. I preheated it and welded up these AR400 plates. I put a chunk of rebar right here and filled up this gap. Obviously welded this chunk of plate in here. I left about a 1/4 inch gap before this chunk of square tubing here and the plate, and filled that in with weld. The welds here are not uniform. They're ugly, but there's not a whole lot of porosity in them. There's a lot of slag, but not a lot of porosity. They got good penetration, and I'm confident that they'll hold, and there's only one way to find out. I have a block of steel here that covers up the square tube, along with one of the die blocks, just to give it a little bit more height, and a chunk of wood. The chunk of wood is there so that the 20 tons of force that this exerts, it doesn't exert it as quickly, if that makes sense. The wood will sort of squish down and it'll exert close the time it takes to go from 0 tons to 20 tons will be expanded versus if I just had cold steel between it. That way, you know, if it fails at 5 tons, I don't give it 20 and it releases more energy than it needs to. Just a little precaution. So I'm going to stand back here to the side. If anything does happen, it'll go straight down. Get things out of the way. Put a block of wood underneath just in case it does explode downwards. And let's see if it works. Good news and bad news. The good news is the platen held just fine. That thing that cracked and broke, well, it was actually this bolt here that held on the pump. It cracked the pump off because the slide here hit the pump. That was my fault. It was a clean break though, so I got to figure out a new way to mount that pump up. But that's not an issue. Alright, I fixed the motor. It's all mounted up proper now. It's out of the way, so that's not going to happen again. Let's test it again and see what happens. I don't think I quite put 20 tons on it last time before it went snap. So let's see what happens. Been rebuilding the forging press. I did have a couple of hiccups along the way, and frankly it was a nerve-wracking project. The whole thing was dealing with 20 tons. That's a fair amount of force in such a small area. So I'm glad it's done, and I'm glad that everything worked out for the most part, other than the motor being sheared off by the carriage. Those welds held, there was no flex, there was nothing. The only thing that flexed was the frame itself. The carriage flexed back and forth as you face it, flexed back and forth a little bit. But I don't think that was the carriage itself or the sliding element. I think that that was just the C channel. I am going to be putting some angle iron in there to stiffen that up and keep it from squeezing like it does sometimes. But other than that, I'm incredibly happy to have that done and to have that bottom platen finished. That forging press, when I built it, I hardly had any money. I had essentially no money, very little welding skill, just not a lot, not enough to build a decent press. Now with the K&T, the saws I have, the steel I've bought, being able to stick weld heavy sections of steel together and be able to be confident in doing it, that has really helped me out quite a bit. If you're looking to build a forging press, I wouldn't ask me for advice. I'd go to someone else. Maybe Mark Krause. He would be a good source of information for building a forging press. But if you've enjoyed watching this video and watching me fumble around in the shop a little bit, then please like and subscribe, and have a good day.